Hello and welcome to my video. Two past perfects? Really? Lots of students think they have mastered the past perfect, and then they see a sentence like this. By the time she had eaten her cake, she had drunk her milk. And they say, huh? How can that be? There are two past perfects in that sentence? But I thought that the past perfect always had to be contrasted with the past simple. Now I'm going to explain why the use of by the time with two past perfect clauses is also correct. And if you stick with me until the end of this video, I'll give you a tricky example to figure out. Let's look at this example sentence again. By the time she'd eaten her cake, she'd drunk her milk. As we know, the past perfect tells us that one event started and finished before another event. But if there are two past perfect events in the sentence, how do we know which one happened first? The answer is actually very simple. In a sentence with by the time and two past perfect events, what is important is when the events finish. So let's look at our timeline. And here we have one past perfect event, had drunk, and here we have the other, had eaten. The two events may or may not start around the same time. Often, the two events continue somewhat simultaneously, that is, during the same general period. But what we need to pay attention to is when they end. By the time refers to the end point of the event that finished later. In fact, in our timeline, we might better change later event to later end point. Now, let's compare this sentence to the other kind of by the time sentence, the one with a past simple part and a past perfect part. How is it different? How does changing the past perfect had eaten to the past simple ate change the meaning of the sentence? Let's start with the past perfect part of the sentence because it's the same in both of our sentences. So we have had drunk, and it started and finished before the reference time. So what about ate? Well, the past simple tells us that the eating began at the reference time. So we can see that there is a very big and important difference between the two sentences. Let's practice. In these sentences, one event finished first and the other finished second. For each sentence, write down which finished first and which finished second. Pause the video and write down your answers. Restart it when you're ready, and I'll give you the answers. Here are the answers. And here we can see that wherever we have by the time in the sentence, the past perfect verb in the same part of the sentence is the one that finished second. Conversely, all the past perfect events in the other part of the sentence are the ones that finished first in the past. Here is another exercise. Look at the timeline and the two events. Can you make a sentence that fits the information in the timeline using the expression by the time? We can see that the two events started at around the same time, although not exactly the same time, and they continued somewhat simultaneously, but one of them finished earlier and the other finished later. Pause the video and write down your answers. Restart it when you're ready. Here are your two possible solutions. By the time Lisa had washed the dishes, Bob had cleaned his room. Or, Bob had cleaned his room by the time Lisa had washed the dishes. So, as we see, the by the time clause can come before or after the main clause. Now here's the next sentence. Once again, look at the timeline. Can you make a sentence that fits the information in the timeline using the expression by the time? The words you need to use are I write email and Sue call twice. And here we can see their placement in the timeline. Pause the video and write down your answers. Restart it when you're ready. Here are your two possible solutions. By the time I'd written the email, Sue had called twice. Or, Sue had called twice by the time I'd written the email. I'm sure you got this right, because as we can see, I'd written the email finished later than Sue had called twice. So, I'd written the email is together with the expression by the time. Okay, here is your next timeline. And here is your information. The earlier event is Connie and write to her grandmother. And the later event is watch TV. Pause the video and write down your answers. Restart it when you're ready. Here are your two possible solutions. By the time Connie watched TV, she had written to her grandmother. Or, Connie had written to her grandmother by the time she watched TV. And as we can see, we have the past simple with the by the time clause, because watching TV began at the reference time. If we had said that by the time Connie had watched TV, she had written to her grandmother, then our timeline would look like this. Good job! That wasn't easy. Now it's time for that really tricky example I promised you. Are you ready? It's another quote from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. By the time she had caught the flamingo and brought it back, the fight was over. Wait, is this another variation? By the time plus the past perfect? And then the second part of the sentence is in the past simple? Ah! Okay, relax. Deep breath. It's actually not another variation. It's really the same type as what we've just talked about in this video. And now, here's the challenge. Can you explain why it's really the same type? Write your answer in the comments below, and I'll let you know if you got it right. Thank you for watching.